Yeah, it is live. Yeah, you can begin, Sagar.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to BSG Ambedkar lecture series. Let me talk to you about the BSG. BSG is Boston Study Group, which is a non-profit registered with IRS under 501c3 and an Ambedkarite organization in New England, USA area, which is dedicated to work towards a just and equitable society. We organize study groups, monthly meetings, lecture series, and other social activities in Boston area to create educational and organizing infrastructure to carry forward our mission. Our membership is composed of individuals, families, students, scholars, academics, and workers who share our vision of equality and upliftment of people. We are particularly interested in creating support structures and working with students from historically marginalized backgrounds. We are inspired by those who work for human welfare, from Buddha and Sant Ravidas to Savitri Mai and Jyotiba Phule to Periyar and Dr. Ambedkar. We welcome you all. We also have our BSG magazine. The Weekend is a Boston Study Group's digital magazine that provides a platform for all the Ambedkarite in the diaspora to share their stories, thoughts, views, and talents to enhance the Ambedkarite movement. The intent is to publish the magazine twice a year, in spring and one in the fall. We are looking forward to literally contributing for our future issues for Ambedkarites across the globe, including our young Ambedkarites. So please visit our website www.bostonstudygroup.org to view the latest issues of the magazine. The our spring s- uh, our magazine for the spring season has already been released on the 14th of April 2024, uh, during our Ambedkar Jayanti celebration uh, that we have organized here at New England, for the New England area. Please go to the website and please take a look at it. So for our today's session, we have Professor Dr. Kamble from Department of Economics with us. He will be talking about the contemporary relevance of development policy of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. So Dr. Kamble Prakash Shankar is a distinguished professor and head of the Department of Economics at Dr. Harisingh Gaur Vishwavidyalaya. With a vast academic background, including MA, MPhil, and PhD in economics from Shivaji University, Kolhapur, he specialized in environmental and resource economics and public economics. With 35 years of vast experience in teaching, he has guided 18 PhD students, 13 MPhil students, and 13 MPhil students to obtain their degrees, as well as numerous students at both the undergrad and postgrad levels, including interdisciplinary programs. Dr. Kamble has an extensive research portfolio with over 390 publications, 22 books written, and 10 edited. He has presented papers at numerous international, national, and state conferences and has received several awards for his research contribution, including the Best Shivaji University Teachers Award in 2022. Additionally, he has undertaken significant research projects funded by organizations like UGC and ICSSR. Dr. Kamble is also actively involved in various academic and professional associations, holding memberships and leadership roles. He visited Japan and Malaysia for academic purposes. Furthermore, he has contributed to accreditations visits as a member and chairman, demonstrating his commitment to academic quality assurance. And advocate for social justice, Dr. Kamble has delivered hundreds of public talks on figures such as Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, Jyotirao Phule, and Rajashri Shahu, as well as socio-economic issues. His dedication to education and societal development underscores his significant contribution to both the academia and the community. Thank you so much, Dr. Kamble, for being with us and giving your most valuable time. I know it's a very different time zone as in India, but Thank you for adhering to our time and just being here. It's now all over to you, sir.
Thank you, Siddhant. I'm very much thankful to Priya. I'm also thankful to all officers and officials of Boston Study Group for providing me an opportunity. First of all, I'm very much thankful to Boston Study Group for giving me an opportunity to deliver a lecture on this occasion. I have purposefully decided this topic because many of the people do not know what's contribution of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar to economics in general and policy making in particular. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar is known as a constituent expert, law expert, social revolutionary, political contribution, religious contribution. But nobody knows much about what Dr. Ambedkar has contributed in the field of economics. He is very highly educated in economics. His research was at international level like Columbia University, London School of Economics. Supplementary to that, he has contributed very significantly in the policy making before independence. He was a cabinet minister of three portfolios, labor minister, power minister, and water minister. And being cabinet minister of these three portfolios, he has contributed or laid a foundation of planning and development in the country like us. It is therefore, I thought that it is of crucial importance to speak on his contribution to the field in economics and policy making, planned development, and all others. But he has contributed a lot, and in one lecture or single lecture, rather it's not possible to touch upon each and every aspect of the contribution which he has given. It's not possible. Therefore, I have selected only one aspect, that is his contribution to the development policy for independent India. And I will speak on that. I am expecting my session will be much expressive and interactive. Majority of questions will be asked by the participants, my fellow delegates, and it will be interactive session. So that I am expecting much more discussion should take place. In brief only, I will present on the topic with the help of PowerPoint presentation. And I am expecting much more time for discussion, Number of questions and comments and queries can be raised, as the result of which I will be in a position to interact more. So I am expecting much involvement, interactions of viewers. Now I am presenting my presentation just for the sake of your convenience. Is it visible? Is it visible?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. This is my plan of lecture, plan of presentation. In brief, I will introduce the topic. Then I will try to place before you what Dr. B.R. Ambedkar has contributed for the development policy, or what was his development policy for the independent India. Then I will take a review of how it is contemporary relevant not only for India but across the globe as well. So how it is relevant and what can be a way forward, how it is useful in the future as well, especially for India and many of the countries in the world. And lastly, I will pass a concluding remark. That is what my outline or plan of my lecture. Now, beginning with development policy of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, already in the introductory part, Dr. Ambedkar was a well-known international economist because the majority of his education was in economics. He did his MA in Columbia University. He completed his PhD in Columbia University, US. He did his DSc in London School of Economics, UK. And in addition to that, what he has contributed, he actively participated in policy making, development policy making during the period 1942 to 46, being a cabinet minister of three portfolios, that is labor minister, power minister, and also water minister. So he has contributed a lot. So in this framework, I will try to present before you. Actually, in the pre-independence period, development policy was thought and prepared by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar in his writings and speeches and contributions. His first research paper or article, Small Holdings in India and Their Remedies, it was a development policy which was proposed by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar for the independent India. His major contribution that we get for the development policy of India in his famous book, States and Minorities. And in States and Minorities, he has contributed lot of things for the development policy of India. Actually, States and Minorities was his memorandum on behalf of his social organization, Scheduled Caste Federation. He wanted to submit to the Constituent Assembly. But fortunately, he was the prominent and dominant so far as Constitution of India framing is concerned. And therefore, he got opportunity to contribute more what was proposed in the States and Minorities. And in the Constitution of India, number of things he contributed, which was proposed in the States and Minorities. Actually, it was prepared before 1947, before pre-independence period. Still, India was not independent. During that period, he contributed. And during 1942 to 46, again, it was an independent period in which he was a cabinet minister of labor, water and power. And there also he contributed significantly. And here we get the proposed development policy for India. Beginning with small holdings in India and their remedies, it was a very well-known, globally acknowledged research paper of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. It apparently looks like that he has talked on Indian agriculture and it is restricted to Indian agriculture only. That is not the case. Even it focuses on Indian agriculture, that proposes a development policy for independent India. And therefore, we should look at small holdings in India, his research paper, as a proposed development policy for independent India. Yes, he says India is agriculture country and there is a need for development of Indian agriculture. Indian agriculture is facing number of problems. Small holdings is there, fragmented holding is there, number of low productivity is there, over dependence is there, number of problems are there, less use of inputs or resources is there. But what Dr. Ambedkar suggested is that the development of Indian agriculture is not possible unless and until the development of industry takes place. Agriculture and industry should go hand in hand so far as development of India is concerned. That only will enable us in the development of Indian agriculture along with development of industry. Dr. Ambedkar visited number of countries and he was well equipped in knowledge and research relating to economics in general and development in particular. So he found that industry development is a well-proved measure for the overall development of the Indian economy, because it was a successful exercise in many of the countries and it can be a solution for development of agriculture in particular, and overall development of India in particular, in general. Then he says, dependence on Indian agriculture is excessive. More than 72% has given a lot of data, which needs to be reduced. And whatever surplus human power is there, labor power is there, that should be absorbed in industry or non-agriculture employment. The surplus manpower will contribute to the overall development of other productive sectors also, and consequently that will help us in the development of not only agriculture but non-agriculture productive activities and sectors as well. What he says is agriculture size is not a major problem for India. Major problem for India is over absorption of human resources, over dependence on Indian agriculture. He has given a data of 72% of the total population was depending on agriculture in 1917, 1980. And that is a problem actually that needs to be removed. In addition to that, what he has suggested is there is a need for making use of productive resources. We call it as inputs. So capital is necessary to be increased. Irrigation facilities are necessary to be provided. Variety of seeds and fertilizers, irrigation facilities is necessary to be supplied. Then and then only that can help us in industry, in agriculture development. And more prominently, he says agriculture of India should be given a status of industry. Because our perspective of the society looking towards agriculture is a subsistence agriculture. It's a means of subsistence only. And that is not sufficient and adequate unless and until a status of industry is given, unless and until modernization, commercialization of agriculture takes place, agriculture development will not take place. The surplus labor power should be removed from agriculture, and that should be absorbed in non-agriculture or industry sector. Such a type of analysis and explanation was given first time by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. After his proposition, after his contribution, after many years, such thoughts were given by the economists like Arthur Lewis, economists like Gunnar Myrdal, but they got Nobel in economics. But Dr. Ambedkar was not considered for his contribution long back, and that is a dismal thing. That is a thing which is necessary to be mentioned on this platform as well. Long back in that direction, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar contributed. After so many years in that direction, it was thought by many other economists like Arthur Lewis and Gunnar Myrdal. But Dr. Ambedkar was not considered for Nobel Prize, Nobel laureate in economics. That is a disappointing thing. Here I want to place people. Talking about his theory of development for independent India, it is very, very exhaustively, intensively proposed in his books, States and Minorities. And in the States and Minorities, actually, in the beginning I mentioned that it is a memorandum of his social organization, Scheduled Caste Federation. And he wanted to submit to the Constituent Assembly because Dr. Ambedkar was not known that he will be the part and parcel or he will be the contributor to the Constitution drafting process or making process. And before independence, he prepared a memorandum and wanted to submit to the Constituent Assembly. When you will look at the States and Minorities or this memorandum wanted to submit to the Constituent Assembly, it is like a constitution, and therefore it is known as a proxy constitution. You will get preamble, you will get article, you will get sub-article, everything is there in the States and Minorities. It is a proxy constitution which was prepared by Dr. Ambedkar in 1947 before independence. But from our perspective, it is a very exhaustive, a very comprehensive development policy which was proposed by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar for the independent India. In these states and minorities, first of all, he mentions, there should not be any exclusion and discrimination. There should be always equality, fraternity, and justice. Unless and until inclusive development is there, we are endeavoring for inclusive development, that development will not sustain. It will not sustain. So the precondition is it should be inclusive development. We are talking about inclusive development, social inclusive development. Since 11th and 12th Fire Plan, we can imagine, before independence also, Dr. Ambedkar thought of social inclusive development of India, because all of us know he has studied society, he has studied the religion, he has studied political system, he has studied exclusion, discrimination, inequalities. So she wanted independent India should endeavor for social inclusive development in which there will not be exclusion, there will not be discrimination, and prominently there should not be any inequality. Poor and rich, industrialist and worker, landlord and labor should not be there. That is what Dr. Ambedkar was expecting. There should not be any discrimination by owner of the labor, by officer of the supporting staff. That also he has mentioned. And there should be always equality, justice, and fraternity in the development perspective as well. Then he says, for independent India, there should not be the problems like poverty and employment inequality, because those will be obstacles and hindrances for the overall inclusive and rapid development of India. In the presence of poverty, in the presence of unemployment, in the existence of inequality, the process of development of India cannot be proceeded, cannot be made dynamic. And therefore he says, take a precaution, formulate a policy that will tackle the problem of poverty, unemployment, and inequality prominently, dominantly, to the earliest possible, to the fastest possible. Then in these states and minorities, he has given a mixed economy model for India. All of us know identity of India is a mixed economy. And Dr. Ambedkar was of the opinion that it is the suitable policy, it is an appropriate system of economy for independent India, because socialist communist economy in development perspective will not be possible, and private economy, fully market economy, fully liberal economy will not be suitable for India on many counts and grounds. And therefore, mixed economy is a suitable economic system, and that model of development Dr. Ambedkar has given in these states and minorities. He says, industrial development should take place based on a mixed economy model of India. Basic industries, major industries, heavy industries, important industries should be developed by the government through public sector, through its representatives. Because these are the basic industries, these are the heavy industries, these are the major industries, important industries. Those can play a very important role in the development of not only industry sector, but overall in agriculture development and overall development of the economy also. But it is a well-recognized fact that all industrial development cannot be developed or is not possible for the government of India. So small industries, micro industries, cottage industries, medium industries, that responsibility should be given to the private sector. So both private and public sector will contribute for the development of India, that will enable and realize the industrial development, not only industrial development, but agriculture development, not only agriculture development, but comprehensive and development of entire economy of India. So that is required. Then in this states and minorities, he says, social protection is very much necessary. And that social protection can be given only by social security measures. And he gives emphasis on social protection through insurance. He says, insurance should be monopoly of the government. There should not be any private participation. There should not be any private sector. So perhaps the insurance sector and insurance services to be provided to the people in India. He says everybody's insurance should be there. And he is very, very stick up to the every citizen of India should have a life insurance policy. Every individual, every citizen of India must have a life insurance policy. That is what he contributed. So far as social security protection to be given, each and every individual, each and every citizen in India, that is what he talks about. Then all of us know Dr. B.R. Ambedkar was highly educated, highly qualified, and as per my little bit study, during that period, in the world, in the globe also, that level of education might have not obtained like that of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. So he was highly educated, highly qualified, not only in India, but as per my little bit study and exercise, during that period, he was highly educated and qualified in the globe as well. So why he was highly educated and qualified? Because he was a firm believer of education is very important. Education is a powerful. Education is a dominant and prominent and powerful instrument of socio-economic, rapid, all-round and comprehensive development. And therefore he was saying those who have taken education, he's always a dominant and prominent, and he knows what is his self-identity, and education contributes very rapidly and significantly for the overall socio-economic development of not only that person, not only that family, but development of that region, economy, state, nation, and globe as well. And therefore, he was emphasizing on, stressing on development of education. In these states and minorities, he says, there should be rigorous, honest, sincere efforts for the overall development of education in India. Because education is very dominant and prominent, very effective means of rapid and all-round socio-economic development of the economy. He says, education is a public good or service. Education is a social good or service. Naturally, hence naturally, it is responsibility of the government to endeavor for overall development of education. He says there should be a separate budget for education. And there are different levels of government which are working in India. They should shoulder, discharge the responsibility of education development. He says the responsibility of higher education development should be shouldered and discharged by the government of India. The responsibility of secondary education should be discharged by state governments, regional governments, and the responsibility of primary education development should be shouldered by local governments. Central government is financially strong. State government is also comparatively better so far as financial position is concerned. So both central and state, they should help to the local governments for primary education development. In this way, education is very important. Everybody should take education, and especially deprived communities, backward communities must take education. That will only help them for their socio-economic development. Everybody in India should take education, because education is a means of, effective means of socio-economic development of not only individuals, not only families, but of the society, of the economy, of the region, of the area, of the nation and world as well. Then he talks about, in the country like us, there is a need for purposive efforts for the inclusive development of India. Since thousands of years, backward community in India, depressed community, deprived communities in India are less developed, underdeveloped. So special efforts are necessary for their development. And therefore, he proposes, we call now as affirmative action. He has mentioned representation to the deprived communities, to the backward communities in the development process, in employment, in services, in education, and also in political empowerment also. So he proposes representation of the backward communities, deprived communities, scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, all others, OBCs and all others, in the service, employment, education, and also political power. And he further mentions that representation, that is reservation, should be given in proportion of population. Taking into account the size of population, reservation to the representation to these different social groups should be given in proportion of the population. And further he says, there should be committee of the backward communities who will monitor how the reservation policy is being implemented or will be implemented. That is what Dr. Ambedkar talks about for inclusive development of India through representation and through affirmative action as well. Then he says, so far as
Dr.
backward
Kamble,
community, yes.
I'm so sorry to interrupt you,
Yes.
are you meaning to change your slides or something? It's been sitting on only one slide, for only first slide. So
yes, I know. No, not necessary. Not
okay.
necessary. Whenever
Perfect.
necessary, I will change, sir. I will change.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Okay, I will change whenever necessary.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. Thank you so much.
And what he mentions is rigorous, sincere, honest implementation of the representation and affirmative action is required. Then as a minister, cabinet minister of labor, water and power, he has contributed significantly in laying foundation of planning and development in India during the period 1942 to 1946. As the labor minister, he has given number of facilities like number of social security measures, that is number of working hours, then employment exchange, then leave, maternity leave, salary, bonus, number of things he has given. As a water minister, he formulated first water policy. He developed a river valley development project. Damodar is there, Kosi is there, Hirakund is there. As a power minister, he formulated a first power policy for India and how the river development project should be, what should be the ingredients of our policy, number of things he has mentioned. As a labor minister, after Second World War, number of plans were invited for the development of India and member countries of the UK also, England. All plans were rejected and denied by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, and he formulated a policy for development of India in the pre-independence period after the Second World War, and also it was continued in the post-independence period also. Now, then moving towards the contemporary relevance of development policy, which was suggested by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. Number one, the identity of India is agriculture country, but Indian agriculture is not contributing to the extent required and desirable. So what Dr. Ambedkar suggested, that is status of industry, status of state industry, that should be given to agriculture, and prominently irrigation facilities and resources which are necessary to be provided to agriculture, and prominently surplus labor power which is there in agriculture should be absorbed in non-agriculture sector, that is industry sector, which is very much necessary. Secondly, industry sector are also not contributing to the extent desirable required in India. Indian economy is service sector led development economy. So emphasis should be given in the development policy to formulate the industrial policy which will prominent and dominantly contribute to the industrial sector, because Dr. B.R. Ambedkar was the opinion that industry development is effective means of overall development. And it's a well-proved measure in globe in many of the countries, especially European countries like UK, Germany, France. And therefore, he was emphasizing that India should try for industrial development prominently, dominantly. He said poverty is a major problem in India, and it is excessive population which is responsible for poverty. He was a member of Bombay Assembly, and being a member of Bombay Assembly, he proposed a population control bill in Bombay State Assembly, but it was not passed; it was opposed. But Dr. Ambedkar said, unless and until population is controlled, problem of poverty cannot be tackled. Today also problem of poverty is very significant and greater. When we take into account the data given by the Planning Commission, data given by the Niti Aayog, data given by the Government of India, intensity of poverty is higher, even though some reduction has taken place. As per the data given by Niti Aayog, 25% is the intensity of multidimensional poverty index. And by 2030, we have to realize sustainable development goals. And zero poverty is one of our first sustainable development goals. So whatever it was suggested by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, on the one hand, control of the population, on the other hand, poverty alleviation measures and policies that is necessary to be formulated and implemented, then and then only it will enable us in realizing and controlling problem of poverty, and that will help us in realizing sustainable development goal, that is zero poverty by 2030, which is a must for India being a member of United Nations Organization. Then Dr. Ambedkar also talked about problem of unemployment. He said employment generation should be given important. Majority of people are absorbed in agriculture, that is not good. There is a need for taking away surplus human power, labor power from agriculture to non-agriculture, and employment in industry and non-agriculture is necessary to generate it, because India is a overpopulated country. There is a problem of possibility of unemployment, so that should be tackled, and for that reason there is a need for employment generation in non-agriculture sector, and prominently if representation is to be given, reservation is to be given to the deprived communities, then recruitment in the center, state, local departments, government should be undertaken. Then he said, in a country when inequalities are there, socio-economic inequalities, that will not serve the purpose of rapid and all-round development. That will become a hindrance in the overall development of the economy. So inequalities should be tackled. And as per the latest data for 2024, 10% richest families have purchased more than 60% of the share of income, and about 65% share of the wealth. And recently, this World Inequality Report of Inequality Lab has been published. Further inequalities has been intensified. So here the thoughts and policies which Dr. Ambedkar has suggested to tackle the problem of inequalities is of crucial importance. That will only enable us in realizing and achieving social inclusive development of India. Then, so far as education is concerned, to the extent required and desirable, education development has not taken place. At this moment, gross enrollment ratio in India in higher education is only 26 or 27%. It is significantly higher and greater in foreign countries, in European and American, and in Western countries, it is more. If that level we have to realize, more efforts are required for the education development. But as per Dr. Ambedkar, that education development responsibility should be discharged by the government, because education is a social good or service. And naturally, in providing budget and providing a separate budget, educational development should be endeavored, that is necessary. Dr. Ambedkar was also very stick up to the health development, because health is of crucial importance. And while providing social protection to the society of India, health should be provided, and insurance can help us in providing health services. But health is also social good and service, so it should be the duty and responsibility of the government for overall development of the health sector also. So that is also important. Now, the model of development which Dr. Ambedkar gave, it was a mixed economy model. But because so far as the contemporary relevance is taken into account, we are rapidly moving towards free economy, market economy, liberal economy. We are vanishing, discarding our identity of India as a mixed economy. There is a need for development of both the private and public sector, and they should go hand in hand so far as overall development of India is concerned. And identity of India as a mixed economy should not be vanished, it should not be discarded, and that is also of crucial importance, and that is very important what policy Dr. B. R. Ambedkar suggested, and it is very relevant, contemporary in present times. That is what we should look at very seriously, honestly, rigorously in the model of mixed economy. Affirmative action, Dr. Ambedkar was saying, reservation affirmative action is a right, and it is a effective means of overall development, socio-economic development of especially deprived communities, backward communities, downtrodden communities. So whereas present context is taken into account, on the one hand we are providing reservation, but we are privatizing public sector, we are dismantling recruitment in public sector departments and uh, uh, representations bodies. So there is a need for restricting privatization. Then only affirmative action will work. Otherwise, it will not serve the purpose. And more importantly, Dr. Ambedkar was of the opinion that reservation affirmative action is very effective means of overall and rapid socio-economic development of the economy. So if we could apply it in the private sector as well, that will be rigorous, honest, and sincere effort directed towards representation to the backward communities, deprived communities, and that will enable us, help us in overall socio-economic development of India. All of us know it is because of Dr. B. R. Ambedkar, Central Bank of India, that is Reserve Bank of India, was set up. Because he did his DSc on problem of rupee. Also, he submitted his memorandum to the Hiltonian Commission, Royal Commission, which is responsible for setting up of Central Bank, Reserve Bank of India. So, Reserve Bank of India should contribute to the development of India. It should contribute to the social inclusive development of India because it is an autonomous body, and Dr. B. R. Ambedkar purposefully recommended to set up this for the effective working of banking system, financial system, and through monetary policy will contribute significantly to the overall socio-economic development of India. That is what it is expected. Now, in this backdrop, what is the way forward? How Dr. B. R. Ambedkar is very much necessary in present India, how he can be incorporated, how his policies and thoughts can be incorporated in the present development policies. That is what I want to place before you. Agriculture policy, in absence of thoughts and policies which were suggested by Dr. Ambedkar, in small holdings in India and their remedies and states and minorities, cannot be a suitable policy for India. So there is a need for formulating agriculture policy in the present context of India, present India, in the framework of what Dr. B. R. Ambedkar has suggested, in the small holdings in India and states and minorities, that will only serve the purpose of suitable agriculture policy, and that will enable us agriculture development. Number two is it is urgent need of the hour to formulate industrial policy in the framework of what was suggested by Dr. Ambedkar, because Dr. Ambedkar was a firm believer only industrial development can enable us in rapid and overall development of Indian economy. So in the framework of that, it is urgently needed to formulate industrial policy that will serve the purpose of industrial development, but more importantly, that will help us in a rapid and overall development of entire economy. So industrial policy in the framework of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar is urgently needed, it is required. Then employment policy is very urgently needed because former President of India, APJ Abdul Kalam, was saying it's possible for India to realize economic supremacy. It is based on only the youth empowerment. So youth, we have 62%, more than 62% youth population is there. But its productive use, its education, health and employment is of crucial importance. And unless and until in that perspective employment policy is formulated, and the productive use of engine of growth, young population through generating employment is not undertaken, the overall development, rapid development, inclusive development of India, rather it will not be possible, it will not be enabled. So employment policy, private sector, public sector, and restricting privatization is of crucial importance. Then education policy is very important. We have to increase our enrollment ratio in higher education. We have to increase primary education, secondary education development as well. So education policies are crucial importance. What Dr. Ambedkar suggested, education is a public good or social good or service. So in that perspective, educational development is necessary, and for that reason, a separate budget is required. And it is a dominant and prominent responsibility of the government, central government, state government, local government, to undertake to carry out educational development, and that policy is required. Health is not developed to the extent required and desirable. We are spending only 1.22% of GDP on health. After COVID pandemic, a little bit increase is found. But to the extent required and desirable, health is not paid attention in the country like us. So health sector in India is privately dominated, private sector dominated. Need of control of private sector health and need for development of public sector health and health policies of crucial importance, and that can be formulated and implemented in the perspective, in the suggestion proposition which is given by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. The policy formulation should be based on the Constitution of India. Constitution of India should be the foundation, should be the base for formulation of any policy, development policy, agriculture policy, employment policy, education policy, inequality policy. Every policy should be formulated in the framework of Constitution, because all have been incorporated in the Constitution. All have been proposed in the Constitution. So the base of development policy, industrial policy, employment policy, inequality policy, poverty, anti-poverty policy, health policy, education policy should be Constitution of India. In the perspective of, as per the provisions in the Constitution of India only, the policy should be formulated, because Dr. B.R. Ambedkar being a major contributor to the drafting of Constitution has provided number of things which are very much useful and urgently needed for socially inclusive and rapid development of India. So Constitution should be base for the formulation of any policy. There is a need for paying attention towards discrimination, exclusion, which is found in many of the areas, many of the sectors in India, especially in rural areas. So whatever Dr. Ambedkar has done and he has proposed, suggested, that should be incorporated and should be formulated anti-discrimination and exclusion policy. There is a need for political awareness and representations, and how they can help us in the formulation of the policy, development policy, which is socially inclusive and which will be rapid and comprehensive so far as development of India. They should play a very important role. Development should not be politicized, or politicization of the development should not take place. So that duty and responsibility should be given to the political parties, representatives, and voters as well, every citizen as well. They should also look for how the politicization is taking place, how the political system is working, how the political empowerment is taking place, and that will contribute for the overall and rapid development of India, which is socially inclusive development. much expectations are there from youth of India because our youth population is dominated more than 62% is a youth population. So youth should be given prominent and dominant role so far as overall inclusive and comprehensive and rapid development of India is concerned. And that should be given in the perspective of what Dr. Ambedkar has said. Education should be given to them, employment opportunities should be provided them, poverty among them should be tackled, inequality among them should be tackled, discrimination, exclusion should be restricted. And in the framework of constitution, number of provisions are there. If the efforts are made, that will enable us what the development policy which is urgently needed for the India. That is what which is expected. So these are the things that I wanted to place before you. To sum up what I presented, what Dr. Ambedkar as an economist and policymaker is urgently needed today, what he has contributed for the development of India, and where the development policy of Dr. Ambedkar we find that is his small holdings in India and states and minorities, and more prominently his contribution as a labor minister, as a power minister, as a water minister, and prominently how it is contemporary relevant and what is a way forward, how it is possible to incorporate Dr. Ambedkar, his thoughts and policies on development for the contemporary India, as the result of which that will enable us rapid and all-round development of India. It will be socially inclusive, that will be socially equal, socially justice, just and also fraternity will be there. That is what Dr. Ambedkar is needed. If in that direction the efforts are being made by the policymakers at national level, state level, local level, that will serve the purpose for which today's lecture was organized by Boston Study Group, and that will provide inputs for the policymakers and how significant Dr. Ambedkar, how he was significant and relevant in the pre-independence period, post-independence period, and today also. For that reason, Dr. Ambedkar is urgently needed for the overall, for the inclusive, for the rapid and sustainable development of India. And Dr. Ambedkar will help us in realizing sustainable development goals to be realized by 2030. That is what I want to present so far as today's lecture is concerned. I am again thankful to Boston Study Group for providing an opportunity. Any questions, any comments, any queries are there on my lecture, on my talk, on my presentation. Those are most welcome. I am desiring, I am willing to respond them. Thank you one and all. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. Over to you, Sanjay sir. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kamble. Like, it was, I couldn't stop myself from not hearing you or distracting myself. Like, it was very involving session altogether, and I definitely learned new things today. So I'm very grateful for you to be here at a very odd time and deliver a lecture after in a full strength after a very long day. Thank you so much. We have like a couple of questions lined up with us. So if anybody wants to unmute themselves, this is the time. You will be given chance to unmute yourself and ask questions in person, or else you can use our chat box and you can drop your questions there, and I can deliver the questions on your behalf here.
Siddhan, there is already a question in the chat box.
Yeah. Yes.
And ask that.
Yeah. I was just giving chance to anybody who wants to, who have already asked the question and wanna unmute themselves and ask the question. If not, then I can definitely start with the question. So here's a question from Priya. Priya, do you want to unmute yourself and ask the same question, or do you want me to?
I think Siddhansh is driving, so you can ask.
Okay, sure. Yeah. So the question from Priya is, how can Ambedkar's emphasis on universal education inform current policies to improve access to quality educations for all children? That's our first question.
It's very important question. Very important question. Dr. Ambedkar, I have mentioned in my lecture as well, talk also, highly educated at that time, not only in India, but in the globe as well. Because he was well known to the importance and significance of education. He was a firm believer that education is a very effective means of overall development of the economy and especially of the deprived communities and backward communities. For the universalization of education, what is happening? We are looking at education as a marketable good or service. When World Trade Organization was set up, since then, education is included in international trade, and we are giving a status of marketable or tradable commodity or service. And therefore, privatization of education is taking place very rapidly and significantly. So, role of government is like that of withering away from education development, but that is not good. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar was suggesting a separate budget should be there for education, and it is sole responsibility of the government for educational development. uh, uh, Higher education, central government, secondary education, state governments, primary education, local governments, and privatization of education will not serve the purpose. There is one proverb in China. Now, to damage any country, that bomb is not required, nuclear weapons are not required. You damage your education system, everything will be damaged. So if we want damaging the economy as well, everything, neglect towards education is expected and desirable. But if we want overall and rapid and comprehensive and intelligent development of any country, education is a must. That will enable us rapid and all-round development, and especially development of the weaker sections, development of the deprived communities and backward communities. That is what Dr. B.R. Ambedkar is very much necessary in universalization of education, not only in India, but across the globe as well. Sanjay sir, over to you.
Okay. We have one question in our chat. Let's see. Okay, we have Satyanath. If you can unmute yourself and ask the question.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Kamble. It was very comprehensive and informative presentation. I have a number of questions I'll just mention, and then you can pick and choose and give me answers. In the mixed economy, when the private sector is there, as well as the public sector is there, then I think the private sector tends to bribe the top echelon of the public sector to, because I've seen this in the phone industry. They have tried to. So how do you protect the public sector from getting?
Yes. I got your question, sir. I got your question. Actually, what has happened? Our perspective looking towards public sector is not good. We are making a comparison of public sector with the private sector, but basically, purpose and motive of public sector is different, and purpose and motive of private sector is different. Private sector is motivated by only profit motive and no social or welfare motive. Public sector is motivated by social welfare and service motive. There can be some weaknesses definitely in public sector, but discarding public sector is not a solution. That will result in, now inequalities in India are increasing, poverty is increasing, unemployment is increasing, and one of the dominant prominent reason is privatization. So representation is not getting, justice is not getting, employment is not getting. So therefore, poverty, inequality, and unemployment is increasing. So yes, there can be weaknesses definitely. There can be weaknesses definitely in public sector, but discarding public sector is not a solution. Some reforms can be brought about, some modifications can be brought about, But this privatization is not a solution. I would say, on the contrary, affirmative action, reservation policy should be implemented in private sector also. Because private sector is exclusively not private, it is also developed on the basis of the services and resources provided by the government. So it is a passive private sector. It is not a purely private sector. Contributions of the government are there. So our perspective looking towards the public sector is necessary to be changed. There can be also weaknesses in private sector as well. But we are neglecting weaknesses in private sector, and we are looking towards only public sector as a weaknesses. So that perspective is necessary to change. Yes, there can be weaknesses. Those can be overcome. Reforms can be brought about. But privatization is not a solution. And control and monitoring of the private sector is also necessary. There are also weaknesses. So our perspective is necessary to change. In that perspective, policy is necessary to be formulated and to be implemented very rigorously, sincerely, honestly. That is what expected and desirable. Over to you, Sanjay sir.
I was thinking that perhaps if we change the policy in the formation of board of directors, because currently in the private sector everywhere, the board of directors is determined by who has more shares or who has more investment in the company. Instead, it should have representation from people who are from the workers, including the management.
Yes, sir. I got your point. Actually, Dr. Ambedkar suggested in board of governance and board of directors, no, representation should be based on voting, and one person, one vote, one value. Because he studied administration and finance of East India Company for his MA dissertation, and there he found that representation in the board of directors and governors was based on the voting power which was given on the basis of shares and equities of East India Company. And there Dr. Ambedkar suggested the representation to the boards should be given based on voting, and voting should be based on one person, one vote, one value. What you are suggested is absolutely right, that the board of director representation should not be based on how much shares and equities have been purchased, but it should be based on one person, one vote, one value, and that is suggested by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar in his MA dissertation, Administration and Finance of East India Company.
Thank you very much. If there is time, I hope I will be given more time to ask some more questions. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Satyanath, for asking question, and thank you so much, Dr. Kamble, for giving such a wonderful answer to it. There's a question which also aligns with similar area by Padma. Padma says that is asking that is there are about like 150 industrial houses, all dominated caste, who have captured some of our Navratna, sports, mineral wealth, etc. Dr. Ambedkar was, in my opinion, very against the predatory capitalism. So what's your thought on this? What would like your thought? Like she wants to hear the thought.
You are absolutely right. Therefore, Dr. Ambedkar suggested in states and minorities, there should be nationalization of land and all natural resources. There should not be private ownership, because when private ownership will be there will be inequalities, and that is found. Upper caste and dominant prominent families have their possession on the natural resources and land as well. Dr. Ambedkar opposed. Dr. Ambedkar suggested in agriculture should be given a status of state industry. It should be owned by government, and it should not be in private ownership. And same is applicable for all natural resources like minerals, what you are talking about. So Ambedkar was very much known that when privatization will be there will be inequalities. And after privatization, inequalities are increasing. Recently only this inequality World Inequality Lab report has been published, and inequality has been intensified in India. That is what that report talks about.
Many thanks, Professor. This was an amazing talk. I really learned a lot from this. So I appreciate your response very much. Thank you.
Can I ask some more questions if you have time?
And I think we have the question from Priyanka. Let's take that one and then we can go back to our Satyanath.
Yep.
Hey, hi. Yeah, thanks a bunch. Actually, my question was related to agriculture and sustainability. So I thought that is already answered. But if I could also just request Dr. Kamble to explain a little bit more about some of the reforms that Dr. Ambedkar had when it came to agriculture, right? Because yes, you said that it should be governed by the state, but seeing the present scenario of farmers, especially small farmers, going through a lot of hardships, were there some specific views of him or policies of him that were targeted at such small landowners or small farmers? That was the question that I really wanted to ask. Thank you.
Yes, you are absolutely right. Dr. Ambedkar focused on agriculture in 1980 study. He talked on agriculture, but it was a development policy. He said, isolatedly, agriculture development will not take place. Agriculture should be given a status of industry, and along with agriculture, industrial development should take place. When industry and agriculture, their development will take place hand in hand, then only development of India is possible. And in 1947, states and minorities, he has suggested that agriculture should be given not only status of industry, but state industry. It should be owned by the government. If privatization will be there, inequalities will be 100%. And that can be a cause for less development of Indian agriculture, low development of Indian agriculture. And we can see now the contribution of agriculture to the GDP of India is less than 15%. Less than 15%. And India is depending upon service sector as a economic growth or development of India, not on industry as well. And industry is also not contributing to the extent desirable and required. So agriculture should be paid attention. It should be given a status of industry. It should be given a status of industry. And in addition to that, surplus labor power should be removed from Indian agriculture. At this moment also, about 60% population is absorbed in Indian agriculture only. There is no need for that. And it is because non-agriculture employment is not there to the extent desirable and required. And therefore, there is a disguised unemployment in Indian agriculture. And in that perspective also, in the framework of what Dr. Ambedkar has suggested, we should look at, we should take into account that also. That is also of crucial importance to be incorporated and implemented as well.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kamble. There's another question which aligns with the education. So what measures can be taken to ensure that higher education remains accessible to marginalized communities in the line of Ambedkar vision?
Yes, a very important question, because already I have mentioned in my talk also, Dr. Ambedkar was highly educated. His majored of education in foreign countries, America, England, Germany, etc., etc. And prominently, he carried out a research in foreign countries, and the problems of research were problems from India only. So far as higher education in India is concerned, at this moment only 26-27% enrollment ratio, gross enrollment ratio in higher education is there. In foreign countries, it might be more than 75%. So long miles to go so far as increasing gross enrollment ratio in higher education is concerned. But unfortunately, to the extent required and desirable, we are not looking at education in general and higher education in particular as a public good or service. And prominently, privatization of education is taking place rapidly and significantly, and that is causing exclusion and discrimination against the deprived communities and backward communities. And to the extent required and desirable, expenditure on education is not taking place. The present expenditure on education in general, not on higher education, is less than 4% of gross domestic product. In 1966, Kothare Commission on Education recommended to the government of India expenditure on education should be at least 6% of GDP. If inflation is taken into account, if rising prices is taken into account from 1966 to 2024, you can see how much expenditure is required to be spent on education in general and higher education in particular. We are implementing National Education Policy 2020 that also talks about we have to spend on at least 6% of GDP expenditure on education. So our perspective looking towards education in general and higher education in particular is changed. We are looking at education as a marketable commodity, tradable commodity or tradable service, and therefore privatization rapidly and significantly is taking place, and that is excluding deprived communities, backward communities. Take example, how many backward communities are taking engineering education, how many students from backward communities are involved in health education. That will give us idea how exclusion is taking place in privatized education, professional education, and only in public sector education only there is representation and involvement of the backward community students. That is a ground reality. Unless and until we restrict privatization of education and we are giving the representation to the deprived communities in private education also free of cost, then and then only backward communities will be involved in the professional education. Otherwise, the doors of professional education like health, like engineering and medical are closed, are shut down for the deprived communities. That is a ground reality.
Yeah, I totally agree, Dr. Kamble, with you on this. As like now I think the education fees specifically in engineering sector and medical sector, everybody knows like it has soared so high that without any financial assistance, none of the person in the community will be able to afford the basic like bachelor's degree of any of the course. Like going for a post graduation is completely different part, but that's not going to happen until we have secured our very best basic bachelor's education. And eventually, even if it is a financial assistance has been provided, there is not enough money on the table to put it towards that a small percentage of 10% of whatever the total entire fee of the year would be. That still is a problem for so many people, either is to put a food on a table or to provide education to the children of child of that particular background or society. So definitely totally agree with your suggestion, sir. Is there any other question directed towards Dr. Kamble? We are towards the end of our session, so we will be here only for another 10 minutes. So if anybody wants to ask any questions or unmute themselves, please raise your hand. I can do the needful for you. And also you can leave some comments in the chat.
Siddhant Satyanathji asked for the question. So
yeah,
ask, and if there is a time, then I will ask question.
Sure. Okay, Sanjay sir. Okay, yeah. Satyanath sir, can you please unmute yourself?
Yes. Thank you very much. You mentioned in your talk something about proxy constitution. I couldn't follow what was that.
Yes. Got your question, sir. Your question. Actually, what happened? Shall I respond, sir?
Yeah, I just wanted to add.
Okay. Actually, what happened, sir? It was pre-independence period, and all of us know Dr. Ambedkar was running that social organization, Scheduled Caste Federation. Actually, it was decided to give independence to India, and the process of constitution framing of the constitution was about to start. Dr. Ambedkar was known very well what situation in the society is there, and to what extent he is accepted. He was known that, and he was unknown that in the constitution making process he will be part and parcel of that process. He was unknown to that. So he prepared a memorandum of Scheduled Caste Federation like that of Constitution. Like that article is there, article is there, sub-article is there, and prominently he proposed a development policy for independent India so that socially inclusive development will take place. That will give justice, equity to the deprived communities, to the backward communities. Development of all will take place. So its structure, its nature is like constitution. Like constitution, if you go through the book States and Minorities, it is like constitution only. Preamble is there, article is there, sub-article is there, parts, sections are there. So therefore this memorandum, this book is known as proxy constitution. Like constitution, proxy means like constitution, and majority of the things, majority of the provisions, those are there in the States and Minorities, have been incorporated in the Constitution of India, because all of us know Dr. Ambedkar was the prominent and dominant so far as making the Constitution of India is concerned. That is what the term proxy constitution is there.
And when you mentioned about industrial policy, what was his industrial policy in brief?
What he was saying is industry is very effective so far as rapid and overall development of the economy. Unless and until industrial development takes place, overall and rapid development of India is not possible. And he observed the globe, he observed the European countries and many developed countries, and he found that in those countries in which industrial development has taken place, those have been emerged out as industrially developed countries, those have been emerged out as economically developed countries as well. And therefore Dr. Ambedkar was forcing that agriculture should be given a status of industry, and more emphasis, more importance should be given to the industrial development. And this industrial development should be in the form of mixed economy model. That is, important industries, heavy industries, major industries should be developed in the public sector. Micro, small, cottage, rural, home industries should be developed in private sector, because every industrial development by the government is not possible in the country like us. Therefore, the model of mixed economy should be adopted so far as development of industry sector is concerned. And industry sector should play a very important role in rapid and all-round development of overall economy as well as employment generation, because there is over involvement of labor power in agriculture sector that was there. That is what the model of our policy, industrial policy of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar was suggested, or it proposed.
Thank you very much. I'm done.
Okay, Siddhant, I can ask question if there is some time.
Yeah, we have some time. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Prakash Kamaji. It is really very informative sessions. We learned a lot from this session, and because mostly we know Baba Sahib's political, religious views and all these, but on the economic views, we don't pay much attention and all this. And knowing those and what contribution Dr. B.R. Ambedkar has for the progress of the nation or the nation building, when even it was not got the independence, is very, very enthralling to know. And thanks for providing that information. In fact, my first question was regarding the same thing what Satyanath ji asked, that why Baba Sahib Ambedkar submitted this our states and minorities reports even before he was not the part of the Constitution drafting committee. So you answered that question. My question is, there are two questions. One is, when the BJP government replaced the Planning Commission with the Niti Aayog, whether it has any adverse impact or the good impact on any policies related to the our communities, especially SC, ST, OBC, and the minorities? That is one question. And second thing is, in your way forward slide, you have shown so many policies and all these. What are the policies where basically you think that the current government is lagging and impacting us adversely for our advancement or our progress?
Okay. Please repeat question. Please repeat question in brief.
Okay. So the first question is when the government, the BJP government, when they came to power in 2014, replaced the Planning Commission with the Niti Aayog.
Okay.
Whether it has any adverse impact or the good impact from our
Okay, got your question, sir.
first question.
Actually, what has happened when we have to realize and achieve socially inclusive, rapid and all-round development of India, in the perspective of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, politicization of development should not take place. Politics is a means for development. Development politicization should not take place. When politicization of development takes place, that becomes an hindrance. And that happens, that is happening. Actually, we have to accept Dr. B.R. Ambedkar as a policy maker, as an international economist, and not as a politicization. He should not be politicized. We should take his thoughts and ideas and policies and his work as a development thoughts policies and not for politicization. If we are using Dr. B.R. Ambedkar for politicization, then what he suggested development policy and inclusive and rapid development of India will not take place. So any political parties, government might be there. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar is needed everywhere. His thoughts and policies and his work is needed, and that should be accepted as urgent need of the country and not for politicization, or politicization of the development should not take place. Politicization of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar should not take place, but Dr. B.R. Ambedkar is required, it is needed, he is needed for the inclusion and rapid development of India. In that perspective, the government should think of, then and then only what Dr. Ambedkar has suggested and proposed and implemented, that will come in reality and that will serve the purpose. That will be realized.
Okay. Great, thanks. So Siddhanta, I will defer my second question because I see that Uday Kumar is asking some question there in the chat box.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. Yeah, sure. Here's a question from Uday Kumar. So what do you think about the increasing prevalence of students from higher caste communities in higher vocational education?
Yes, Uday Kumar has asked a very relevant question. Already I have mentioned that because of privatization of education,
right,
and even in professional education, suppose representation is given to the backward communities, the fees is not affordable, and even the seats are available. The student from backward community is not in a position to take admission in professional education, medical and engineering. So that is a problem. Therefore, exclusion is taking place, and consequently, the upper caste students are taking benefits of that. So the solution is there should not be privatization of education, and if private education is there, the treatment to be given to the backward community students is like representation. From backward community also in engineering, lakhs of rupees fees is being collected. In medical, lakhs of rupees fees is being collected, and it is not possible for the backward community student, and therefore upper caste students are dominant and prominent. But to that extent, the proud community students are not adequate or not up to the extent which are required and desirable. So that is being observed. Inequalities are increasing, especially in professional education, engineering, medical, and also in private education, privatized education. That is there.
Okay. Totally true. With privatization and education, there's education increase and the hike in the education. Say the fees or the services that they provide, which cost money, is definitely not able to be afforded by the most of the marginalized community people. So definitely there is definitely an inequality, and the difference is also increasing. So true, 100%. I think there's only a 1 minute. I can allow Priyanka to unmute herself and just have a question. If we can do that, please. And then we can proceed to our closing. This would be our last question. Yes, Priyanka.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Siddhant. This is just an impromptu question that came to my head, Kamble, sir, while you were talking about education. I totally agree when you said that medical and engineering education, these professional degrees are sort of a bit beyond the reach of our people because we are not that economically strong. But just another thought that I would like your thoughts on. I feel like engineering and medical uh, uh, these two fields are quite overhyped at the moment. Of course, Baba Sahib did talk about science and being involved in science and technology, but taking into consideration the top positions in places like Supreme Courts and the what do you call uh, I mean, all I'm trying to say is, don't you think that we also need to sort of uh, give our students we need more intellectuals in arts, humanities, law and all these things, so that the Archaeological Survey of India, for example, it's primarily dominated by upper caste folks. So don't you think that these institutions, other institutions which are not really engineering and medical based, it is also a need for our people to sort of be there so that they can do their jobs properly? Because if we talk about Archaeological Survey of India, there are many excavations that they do, but as we know, they sort of Brahmanize things, and the real history sort of is not coming to the limelight. So don't you think that we also need to sort of have holistic view on education for our folks? Yeah.
Yes, you are right. You are right. What is happening is it is becoming difficult to involve in the education because when it's professional education, it's highly costly and it's very difficult. And unfortunately, the schemes and programs which are expected to help to the deprived community students, those are inadequate. Less number, and number of our desire number of desired students is number is big, so that is inadequate, and consequently they are uh, uh, going out of stream of the education which is expected and desirable. So unless and until what Dr. Ambedkar suggested, education is a public good or service, and government plays a crucial and important role in education development. And even if some private sector is there, there is a regulation monitoring of the private sector from the perspective of the backward communities. The educational development, which is I would say unlopsided or balanced educational development in the country like us, will not take place. So it is urgent need of the hour to understand, to study Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, his policies, thoughts, and his work, and its implementation is urgently needed. And whatever is there, that should be in the constitution of India, that should be implemented, that is required. And if in that direction only efforts are being made, that will serve the purpose, what we call it as a inclusive and rapid development, as well as inclusive and rapid educational development of India as well.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, sir. With the I think we are all blown away with the depth of the knowledge that you have. What an excellent presentation, what an excellent talk we had today. Like, I'm taking a lot of I think I'm not just speaking on my behalf, but I think everybody is so happy with the talk today. It was so comfortable, flawless, and it went well, so well. It was so good. Like, thank you so much, Professor Kamble. It shows like how depth of a knowledge that you have, and we couldn't have asked for any better session than this today. But thank you so much for your valuable time, all your inputs, and answering all of our questions, and also respecting all the people, all the participants, for patiently waiting for your turns for your questions, also asking the very best questions so far, and also for all your time. I know most of the people are not here in the US, but also attending from India, and this has been a very informative session. And given that the time right now currently in India, thank you for your commitment to it. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much.